So one of the worst things someone can do during a custody case or a divorce case involving custody of small children is to speak negatively to about the other parent to their child. It's important to remember that your child is 50% you and 50% the other parent. And if you speak negatively about the other parent to your child, you're kind of telling the child there's something wrong with them as well. So hopefully that helps put some of that in perspective, but it does no good for your case. Judges look really poorly on parents who are speaking negatively about each other in front of the children, because it's just puts the children in a really bad situation, makes them feel bad, and really enmeshes them in a divorce. So one of the number one things we tell clients is to, save that for, your parents or a loved friend or somebody else that you need to use as a sounding board, but try to not speak negatively about the other parent in front of your children. So another common pitfall we see in custody cases comes up with documenting every single thing that happens with the other parent. And you see this really where it reaches past usefulness and into disruptiveness. And you see it when parents are videotaping exchanges with the children. And sometimes that's necessary, but it's more often not absolutely unnecessary. And it puts a bad light on the visitation exchange for the children. They're very confused about why mom or dad has their phone out and they're videotaping it. I've seen situations where somebody actually set up a tripod with a small camera on it with a GoPro camera to videotape the exchange. And there had been no reason for it. There was no violent altercations between the parents. There were no verbal altercations. It was just, I guess, thinking that maybe something would happen one day and they'd catch it on film. But it was doing far more damage and had a far more negative impact than they realized. Another common mistake in custody cases, visitation cases, that we see is where a parent is routinely missing visitations or routinely late or missing the exchange time. It really impacts the child negatively. They're excited about seeing the other parent. And when that parent constantly cancels, it usually happens at the last minute. They don't have their weekend visitation because something came up. The child's left disappointed. It also can have negative impacts down the road on a legal case, on a modification of custody or visitation, because if you're not exercising your visitation, it can be reduced in a modification. It also, if you ever came to a point where you wanted to seek more visitation, it's going to really be difficult if you haven't been exercising what you already have. So one of the big mistakes that we see people making is not exercising all of the visitation that they're given through the court order. One of the trickiest parts of navigating a co-parenting relationship, either during the divorce or after the divorce, is communication with that other parent. Ideally, the two parents can still speak on the phone to each other and resolve issues that way. Doing that over the phone is really helpful because you can hear tone of voice, you can talk through things. If you've got a question or something doesn't make sense or you're maybe not understanding each other that well, a phone call works really great. You can always follow that up with an email or a text and say, just memorializing what we discussed on the phone if you feel like that's necessary. That's ideal. Obviously, that's not always the case. Text messages work really well because it's in black and white, but you don't always get the tone of what the person's trying to share. And then in some situations, we have to use co-parenting apps where the messages are on the app. It gives attorneys and the judge the opportunity to see those messages and all of the messages instead of screenshots of a text message here and there. They can review what the parents are saying to each other. One of the other great things with those apps is that some of them will flag you if you're using words or phrases that may come across negatively or poorly. Before you hit send, it'll pop up and suggest that you go back and make some changes, which is helpful in and keeping a civil communication with the other parent, and not crossing boundaries or adding hostility to a fractured relationship. So there are a number of pitfalls in navigating a custody dispute. And I think most people are approaching it from the right way, but they may let their emotions get the better of them. And so one of the things we like to do early on is provide some feedback and some input on, these are the kinds of things you want to avoid doing. These are the kinds of things you want to do to better your co-parenting relationship, because you're going to parent these children for the rest of their lives. So if that's helpful for you, you have other questions, please call us at the Manili Firm, and we're happy to give you some additional advice and thoughts on how to best co-parent.